Guys, if you are looking for a homestead in the United States, no matter where you are actually, one of the most important things is going to figure out what your growing zone is. So this right here is a map of the USDA hardiness zones. So most people will think, hey, you go further north, it's colder, you go further south, and it's going to be warmer. That's not always the case. So if you look over here, let me move my face around. Over in northern New Mexico, it's known as Little Alaska. There's that dude Will Survives out that way, and you can tell it's like people think, oh, Arizona, New Mexico, it's very warm, it's the desert. It's actually like super, super snowy there right now. But you can actually go from this part of New Mexico, and you go all the way up to the tip of Idaho, and you say, oh, wow, this is probably going to be extremely cold, like actual Alaska. And you can see it's green. So the winters up there, from the locals that I talked to and what I've experienced, has been similar to that of like central to maybe northern Pennsylvania. So as the crow flies, you're like, wow, that's way further north. It's right up by the Canadian border. It's going to be really, really cold. But it's actually going to be warmer than the stuff all the way down south in New Mexico. So the biggest kind of like factor in that is going to be the mountains. So if you have mountains down south, it's going to be a lot colder than maybe a flat land up north. So you go to California, it's super, super warm. You have Death Valley, then you cross the Sierra Nevada mountains, and then all of a sudden they got 66 foot of snow last winter. And it's like, holy cow. You go a couple hours to the west and in the valleys and like San Francisco and all that, and it's warmer. And then you go down to LA and San Diego, and it's like super, super warm. So it's crazy that just from here to here, it's such a huge temperature gap. Same thing with Washington. All of the rain is coming from the west coast, gets caught up in, I guess, the Rockies and the Sierra Nevadas down south, but I guess that'd be like the Rocky Mountains. And all of a sudden, the other side of it's going to be dry, which is a completely different growing conditions over there. That's why it's all desert. So it works both with like the west side, and then let's go over east right here. See Florida, tropical, very warm. And that's why there's so many people going between Florida and then the mountains of North Carolina, because it's the first mountain range where you can actually get away from all the heat. But you can see it's green, which is similar to that of Idaho in a lot of places, also in Virginia, all the way up into Pennsylvania. So the weather there is going to be still similar to that of over in Pennsylvania and parts of like Rochester, New York, and Syracuse and all that. Or maybe Syracuse, whatever is over this way. I think that's Buffalo. Anyhow, if I don't know if I can zoom in on this right here. I can't, but right over here there's a blue spot of West Virginia, and that's part of like Spruce Knob and all those mountains in that area, highest point in West Virginia. So the stuff that is going to grow in that area is similar to that of what would grow in southern Canada. So you're all the way like relatively south from Canada, and you see a bunch of spruce trees, fir trees, wild blueberries growing, cranberry bogs, a bunch of cool stuff like that. So there's going to be little pockets, they call them like islands in the sky, where everything else is growing in like the normal area. Then you go high up, and then it's like a completely different ecosystem, which is really neat. So that's another thing to look out for. Not look out for, but just look into, because that's going to affect your growing season. You go over to like Montana in this area where it's like blue and purple. I think the growing season is like 3 months, to where as Central Tennessee, which is I think the nursery capital of the United States, is the growing season is like absurdly long, you know. Not absurd, it's like what you want. Probably in the maybe 250 day range or something like that. Don't quote me, I'd have to look it up. I didn't do a whole lot of research for this. This is all just in my head. So it's very neat. You can go up north and it looks like Michigan is green too, but as a whole, when you look into this area, north to south generally is going to be colder up north, but if you get into the mountains or in like a low-lying high desert area, it all just kind of changes. So when you're looking for an area, you want to know your growing season, because if you're used to growing certain plants like mangoes and coconuts, you're not going to be able to do that up north unless you do one of those greenhouses that you do below like the ground, which there's a dude up in, I think, North Dakota, who was growing lemons there, and he was making a killing off the local farmers market because no one else was like able to source lemons, and he was selling them for I think less than it would be in the grocery store, and he was still like making good money for what he is. People think Texas is always going to be really warm, and you go over to Texas, and then the northern part is like really cold. I know it just shows green, but that's apparently they have like really cold winters. You go down south, and it's getting to like the subtropical, tropical areas. So the USDA hardiness zone map is going to give you a good indicator of where you want to live. So if you didn't have this and you say, oh, well, I'm used to Virginia, I'm just going to go straight across and it's going to be the same. It's not always like that. Look into the hardiness zone, and it will save you a lot of time.